Almost 28 million students return to school today, but some encounter old problems like shortage in classrooms and facilities. Former President Benigno Aquino III claims there is no direct proof that indicates Dengvaxia caused the death of some vaccinees. And government hopes for hassle-free public business transactions once the ease of doing business law is fully implemented. Y News begins now.
From the UNTV News and Rescue Command Center in Quezon City, this is Y News.
Good evening. Almost 28 million students in public and private schools across the country are back to school. Although the Department of Education is confident of the preparations it laid down for the opening of classes today, some schools still experience problems. Joanano explains why.
More than 27,700,000 students of kindergarten to grade 12 returned to school. Education Secretary Leonor Briones says the opening of classes today has been orderly and peaceful based on the reports of its division and regional offices. Briones notes there are fewer reports on the usual problems like lack of books and classrooms. She claims public schools have already reached the ideal teacher-to-student ratio of 1:40, the toilet-to-student ratio of 1:50, and the student seats ratio of 1:1.
Ang usual problems are now unusual challenges kasi hindi na sila typical.
The Education Department assures students will no longer take classes under the trees this school year, but they will continue constructing classrooms to ease the congestion of students in other schools.
And we are estimating about 85,000 classroom in addition to the existing ones. And most of these are here in Metro Manila.
In Parañaque National High School, for example, many classrooms are being constructed to accommodate around 10,000 students. In the Batasan National High School in Quezon City, there are almost 16,000 students. The school management says it will no longer accept enrollees. The school sets up a help desk to help late enrollees register in nearby schools.
Sobra-sobra na ma'am, okay. Hindi nagkaroon ng additional classrooms, dumadami ang bata. So, the best solution is i-address natin, which is, talagang proper naman na i-guide natin para ma-enroll sila in other public school.
Secretary Briones made rounds in the Quezon City High School to personally assess the situation there. Joanano, UNTV News and Rescue Philippines.
Students in some provinces experience difficulty and overcrowding as they return to school today. Here's why from Bernard Dadis.
1.7 million students returned to public schools in Central Visayas as classes open today. But some of them experienced difficulty as 38 schools in Cebu region were not fully prepared for the new school year. Department of Education Region 7 reports that most of these schools lack chairs, water, and sanitation facilities. But it assures this will not hamper students from getting quality education.
It was generally stated that these 300 plus na schools labeled as NR, meaning not ready, again, have to reiterate again that the operation will still go on. The show must go on.
Nearly 12,000 students, meanwhile, are forced to endure overcrowding due to shortage of classrooms in Davao City National High School. Its current room-student ratio is 1:70 to 75. While those who can no longer be accommodated are referred to nearby schools. Baguio Central School in Cordillera Region, meanwhile, is forced to postpone the opening of classes for grades 1 to 3 following incomplete repairs in classrooms due to rains in the past days. While in Bulacan, the local government of Maykawayan distributed bags and school supplies to over 20 public elementary and secondary schools. This is to help poor parents and students struggling to purchase school supplies. Bernard Dadis, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Teachers and students in Marawi City also face a number of problems in the first day of classes, as some of them refuse to go back to school after the war. Leslie Longboan tells us why.
Classes in some schools in Marawi City also opened today, a year after it was shaken by a crisis. But some students refused to go back to school for fear that terrorists might invade school campuses again. Because of this, the management of the Amay Pakpak Central Elementary School vows to focus on giving students psychosocial debriefing. This includes the lack of chairs for the estimated 3,000 students of APSES. The students have no choice but to sit on the floor.
So sabi ko, magdala na lang sila ng rug na pwedeng upuan ng mga bata as of this moment na wala pa silang upuan. Or magkumpuni na lang dun sa mga upuan na pwedeng gamitin pa.
Teachers also complain of not being able to use some classrooms that are turned into storage rooms for relief goods.
Paano kami makapasok? Even the key, we are not the handler of the key. So di kami makapaglimpyo. Or else kung i-move out namin dito sa labas na baka mawala na kami pa ang maanuan.
Classes in APSES have a single shift only due to the existing martial law in Mindanao. Classes here begin from 8 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. Leslie Longbowen, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Several parents and students in an elementary school in Quezon City attend a class simulation a week before the class opening. Rosalie Cos tells us why.
Separation anxiety or SEPANCS is a common problem among children during the opening of classes. It poses big challenge to teachers as pupils throw tantrum and cling to their parents because they feel anxious and going to school.
Umiyak po, 2:00 mga kami nag-prepare na para makahanda na nga ng pagkain. Ngayon, pagdating namin dito, umiyak talaga.
This transition can be really stressful and disruptive, so to help relieve SEPANCS among children, the President Corazon Aquino Elementary School in Quezon City devised a class simulation this year. The school's principal, Dr. Elvira Dumlao, says they held class simulation last week to help children and parents get comfortable in the routine of going to school.
Almost 75% of population nandito nung simulation namin. Before simulation, inorient ko muna ang parents. And then the following day, bata naman.
So, ni-ready po namin yung mga bata for the first day of class.
As of June 2, 2018, the President Corazon Aquino Elementary School has around 8,800 enrollees for school year 2018-2019. Last year, the rooms were divided into 2 and there were 60 students in each class. But because of the newly built 2 4-story buildings, new rooms became available and the problem of congestion is somehow resolved. The school is targeting to have 40 to 45 students in each room. Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
Classes in a school in Marikina City transected by a fault line also started today despite the danger posed by the so-called the Big One. Ray Pelayo tells us why.
Having a fault line inside the compound of the Boracay Elementary School in Marikina City is not enough to stop the students in entering their classes that also started today. The UNTV drone captured one of their buildings in the west side of the school compound. The PHIVOX identified this structure transected by a fault line which is part of the West Valley Fault. No classes were conducted in the building and the second floor serves only as their storage rooms. Arrow markings were also painted on a pillar of the building notifying the location of the fault line that is also transected along the Home Economics building.
May mga classrooms kami dyan, yun na lang ang ginamit namin. Tapos ginawan ko na lang ng paraan na mapagkasya yung mga bata.
The school conducts earthquake drill twice a month to teach parents and children of what to do in case of earthquake occurrence. Students are equipped with whistles and hard hat together with their go bag that contains first aid paraphernalia, water, food and flashlight. The school principal noticed the increase of enrollees this year compared to the more than 1,800 students last year.
Walang lumipat ng school. Tapos ngayon itong enrollment na to, ang laki ng itinaas ng enrollment namin.
The West Valley Fault is a 100-meter-long fault line system that stretches from Bulacan to Laguna. PHIVOX said it can generate up to 7.2 magnitude quake. Ray Pelayo, UNTV, News and Rescue, Marikina City.
Meanwhile, former President Benigno Aquino III claims there is no direct proof that indicates Dengvaxia caused the deaths of some vaccinees, while the Public Attorney's Office insists the World Health Organization guidelines cover the exhumation and autopsy of victims' remains. Mai Bermudez tells us why.
Former government officials maintain no wrongdoings in relation to the Dengvaxia anomaly. During the preliminary investigation of the Department of Justice today, former President Benigno Aquino III, former Health Secretary Janet Garin, and former Budget Secretary Florencio Abad personally submit their counter-affidavits on the controversial 3.5 billion pesos worth of anti-dengue vaccine. Aquino stresses there are no categorical findings directly linking Dengvaxia as the cause of death of some vaccinees. Aquino, Garin, and Abad are facing complaints filed by the Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption or VACC and Vanguard of the Philippine Constitution or VPC.
Yung mga may threat supposed to be, nung severe dengue is anywhere from 0.2 to 10%. So yung protection for the 90 and more should be avoided.
Aquino also addresses issue on the questionable procurement of the said vaccines, which allegedly coincided with the election ban in 2016.
Pag dumating yung election campaign, election ban, which was March 26 to May 9. Yung pinaka-last na action na siguro masabi natin kaugnay ng disbursement, yung pag-execute ng purchase order which happened on March 9. So March 9 and March 26, medyo magkalayo.
Aquino also says the complaints against him and his former aides seem to have become a forum shopping.
Itong complaint na to, may similarity sa complaint filed sa COMELEC at doon na rin sa, we think, pareho rin doon sa ombudsman. Ngayon, bakit we think? Sa ombudsman, wala pa kami natatanggap Sa COMELEC, pinaharap na kami.
Garin meanwhile emphasizes that the confirmation of the deaths of children who have undergone autopsy failed to follow the World Health Organization's guidelines.
Sa pag-determine ng causality, kung ito ba ay namatay dahil sa bakuna o hindi, may proseso na sinusunod ang WHO. Hindi po ini-exhume at ino-autopsy ang pasyente.
The Public Attorney's Office, which conducted the autopsies, meantime lashes out at Garin.
WHO rin ang ang basis namin sa determination of cause of death. May WHO reference materials din ang PAUCAM. Okay?
The next hearing will be on June 22 when complainants are also expected to submit their comments on the counter-affidavit subscribed upon by the respondents. Mai Bermudez, UNTV News and Rescue, Manila.
The public will soon have hassle-free business transactions with the government once the ease of doing business law is fully implemented. The government also expects the law to help improve the country's economy. Here's why from Joanne Nano.
The Philippines claims the 173rd spot out of 190 in terms of nation having faster process of transacting with the government. But with the new ease of doing business law, the government is hoping the Philippines could go up in the ranking. Under the law, simple government transactions will only take 3 days, complex ones will take 7 days, and technical transactions should only take 20 days. These transactions include business permit, NBI, passport, and other clearance permits, among others.
Gusto natin sana yung action ng pamahalaan ay talagang hindi pinapahirapan, parang hassle-free. Gusto natin mas mabilis, at saka hindi siya mahirap, hindi mapapagod ng husto yung ating mga taong bayan.
The Philippine Chamber of Commerce also believes the law will have a positive impact to the country's economy.
Noon, panay pakiusapan, panay pagtuturo. Ngayon, meron ng batas na nagsasabi na pag hindi kayo sumunod, may penalty,
First-time offenders will face a 6-month suspension, while second-time offenders will face imprisonment up to 6 years.
Dapat mabilis, hindi natin pinatatagal, hindi natin pinapahirapan, hindi tayo nang hihingi ng mga requirements na hindi naman talaga kailangan.
The implementing rules and regulation of the said law still being crafted. Despite this, anyone who has complaints about slow document processing may report it to the DTI Competitiveness Bureau. Joanne Nano, UNTV News and Rescue Philippines.
Next on Y News. Filipinos in New York City kick off largest Independence Day parade outside the Philippines. A visually impaired man defeats other A Song of Praise or ASOP songwriting contenders in the first weekly elimination for the month of June. And GSIS Thunder Furies remains in high spirits despite defeat against leading PNP responders. Judiciary Mattis meanwhile climbs up the score ladder along with the Ombudsman Graph Busters. Y News will be right back. Meanwhile, stay tuned for Angelo Castro III. I'm Darlene Basingan. Good evening.
On Y News tonight, Bicameral Conference Committee vows to thoroughly scrutinize and reconcile disagreeing provisions of their proposed Bangsamoro Basic Law. President Rodrigo Duterte eyes buying new helicopters from South Korea following the failed aircraft acquisition from Canada. And the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, has warned the public to observe consumption of spam due to possible contamination. Good evening. Several provisions of the proposed Bangsamoro Basic Law will undergo thorough scrutiny in the Bicameral Conference Committee. These include the power-sharing taxation and the areas under the jurisdiction of the Bangsamoro region. Here's why from Bernard Dadis.
The Bangsamoro Basic Law or BBL versions of the Senate and the House have significant differences with 150 amendments in total. Senate Minority Leader Franklin Drilon says the deliberation of the Bicameral Conference Committee will help ensure that disagreeing provisions of the two versions will be reconciled. These include the territories that will be under the Bangsamoro region. Senate's versions target to cover 39 municipalities of North Cotabato, but the lower house removes it in its version. The upper chamber meanwhile removes Palawan and excludes provisions on the reserved, concurrent, and exclusive powers of the Bangsamoro government. But this is in contrast of the position of the House of Representatives. In terms of tax sharing between the Bangsamoro region and the national government, the Senate proposed a 50-50 share, while the lower house wants a 25 to 75% share. Another provision of the Senate BBL version not present in the House version is the banning of political dynasty. The House version also does not state that the Bangsamoro people are Filipino citizens. Although there are significant differences, some senators believe their BBL version is not watered down.
All the important concepts are there. May block grant, may special development fund, mayroong taxing power, yung hatian, andyan yung parliamentary structure of government.
Subcommittee on BBL Chairman Juan Miguel Zubiri expects the Bicam to be more thorough in creating a unified version of the BBL. The Bicam meeting will be held from July 9 to 13. The lawmakers eye to ratify the BBL on the resumption of session on the 23rd of July during the State of the Nation address of President Rodrigo Duterte. Bernard Dadis, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
The Department of Agrarian Reform begins identifying beneficiaries of the land reform program in Boracay Island. It also warns recipients against violating the conditions of land distribution. Here's why from Ray Pelayo.
The Department of Agrarian Reform identifies around 80 Ati indigenous people that will be candidates for the distribution of agricultural land in Boracay Island. DAR Undersecretary David Ero says around 25 hectares of land are clear from any structure and can be distributed immediately as part of the Phase 1. Coconut trees may be planted here but not rice seeds. The official adds around 220 hectares will be distributed in Phase 2, which are identified with structures, while the Phase 3 covers the rest of the 620 hectares. Dumping 1 to 3 feet of topsoil will be needed to make the agricultural land in the area productive. Hero notes there are also around 200 IPs that could become beneficiaries. They are now living in the mainland after they were displaced due to the island commercialization.
Yung produkto nila ibibigay doon sa pangangailangan ng mga establishmento doon. In the same manner na yung mga establishmento doon, parang meron na silang ready supply.
Dar warns the beneficiaries not to violate the conditions of land distribution because they could repossess the land from them. The agency also proposes to allot a land measuring 1 kilometer from the shoreline for commercial and tourism purposes. Ray Pelayo, UNTV, News and Rescue, Quezon City.
President Rodrigo Duterte apologized to the Kuwaiti government during his meeting with the Filipino community in South Korea. The president also vows to expedite the processing of documents of OFWs. Victor Cosare tells us why.
Filipinos in South Korea were all smiles when they welcomed President Rodrigo Duterte in Seoul yesterday, meeting with the Filipino community were the president's first stop when he arrived here for his official visit. The president also gamely sang duets with some singers amid the cheers of the Filipino. In a speech, Duterte reported the positive outcome of the Philippines' talks with Kuwait to provide protection for the OFWs in the Gulf state. He also apologized to the Kuwaiti government for what he described as harsh words after the discovery of a dead body of a Filipino working there.
For the first time, I would say that I was harsh in my language, maybe because that was a result of an emotional outburst, but I'd like to apologize now. I'm sorry for the language that I was using.
The president also thanked the government of South Korea for its fair treatment of Filipinos working there. The president also vowed to hasten the processing of documents of OFWs.
Yung pabalik-balikin mo, bantay ko sa akin. Pag umabot sa akin yan, ikaw ang pabalik-balikin ko sa Malacanang araw-araw. Tapos, sampalin kita.
One of the promises made by the president in front of the Filipino community is to protect the sovereignty of the country as long as he is the president. Victor Cosare, UNTV News and Rescue.
President Rodrigo Duterte plans to procure new helicopters from South Korea following the failed aircraft acquisition from Canada this year. During his speech before the Filipino community in Seoul, the president explains he ordered the cancellation of the chopper deal in February after the Canadian government said the choppers can only be used for humanitarian missions and not for combat operations. However, the president argued he needed air defense to protect the Filipino citizens against the enemies of the state, such as the New People's Army and foreign terrorists. Colorful Filipino costumes and dances take spotlight during a parade in the heart of New York City, USA. Sanicos explains why.
Filipinos in New York celebrate early the Philippine Independence Day, but instead of the usual June 12th, this was done yesterday at the world-famous Madison Avenue in Manhattan, New York. Filipino Americans in northeastern United States celebrate what is dubbed the largest commemoration of the anniversary of the country's freedom outside the country. It is usually done 1 week earlier than the usual date. Manhattan is considered as the heart of New York City, and Madison Avenue is known as part of its business center, where kababayans launched the parade highlighting colorful culture and Filipino values. National costumes together with folk dances from different provinces also take center stage. Police and Philippine Consulate in New York estimate almost 1 million Filipino-American in attendance. Some of them sent their well wishes to Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte.
We're praying for your good health and for the best of your administration. Maraming salamat. We love you so much.
My message for him is to keep himself healthy because we need him, and to continue doing what he thinks is good and right for our country, to ignore his detractors. We are 101% behind him. So whatever will happen, we'll be supporting him.
According to the consulate office in New York, the annual parade is an opportunity to show the unity of Filipinos in America. The Consulate General explains that in the coming days, other consular offices in the U.S. will also conduct their celebrations, like one in Washington, D.C., where ambassadors and other dignitaries from different countries will attend a party hosted by the Philippine Embassy. Sonicus UNTV News and Rescue, New York, USA.
President Rodrigo Duterte appoints Roy Ferrer, a member of the Board of Directors of the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, as a new PhilHealth acting president and CEO. Ferrer was a former medical consultant in Ricardo Limso Medical Center in Davao City and also a medical specialist in Davao Medical Center. Ferrer replaces Celestina Jude de la Serna, who was reportedly fired by President Duterte after being allegedly involved in anomalies and questionable expensive trips and hotel accommodations. The Laban consumer filed a petition before the Energy Regulatory Commission or ERC seeking to stop the imposition of a 7-cent increase in power rates due to feed-in tariff or FIT. Consumers pay feed-in tariff in exchange for the creation of clean form of energy in the country like solar and wind energy. The Laban Consumer Group says the imposition of FIT is unreasonable as it did not undergo proper process. DOE Secretary Alfonso Cusi meanwhile notes they will bar the imposition of FIT since the President does not allow it. But Meralco says the 7-centavo feed-in tariff already takes effect in the June billing of its customers. The Food and Drug Administration or FDA has warned of possible contamination in luncheon meat products amid reports of orally injured American consumers due to metal pieces in Spam products. In the United States, Hormel Food Corporation issued a recall order for more than 228,000 pounds of Spam and other products due to reports of metal shards found inside containers. In response, the FDA urged Filipino consumers in an advisory to be vigilant in consuming Spam Classic Luncheon Loaf and Hormel Food Black Label Luncheon Loaf. According to the FDA, affected batches of Spam products bear these product codes on your screens, all of which have best buy date of February 2021. If the products were found to be contaminated, consumers should immediately destroy or return it to the establishment where they purchase it and report it to the FDA through info@fda.gov.ph. Darlene, Basingan, UNTV News and Rescue.
A visually impaired man defeats others in a song of praise or ASAP Songwriting contenders in the first weekly elimination for the month of June. Here's why from Leslie Longbowen.
Composed by Jeffrey Lim, Naway Aking
Blind composer Jeffrey Lim wows the panel of judges of a Song of Praise or ASAP Songwriting competition with his entry entitled Naway Aking Makamit.
Naway aking makamit sa paraisong langit sana ako'y makarating.
The judges commend Jeffrey for beautifully weaving words and melody, producing a unique, inspirational song, defeating other contenders in this month's first weekly elimination.
Kasi ang dating sa akin ng kanta, dahil sa napakahusay din na pag-areglo ng kanta, parang musical kasi iba-iba yung moods ng kanta, no?
Very clear ang mga song sections. Harmonically, na-establish ang song section contrast, which is a good quality ng kanta.
Even Jeffrey's song interpreter Enzo Villegas lauds the song composition.
Natuwa ako doon sa pagkakagawa ng areglo ng song kasi hindi siya conventional. Marami siyang sections na magkakaiba, pero nung pinagdikit-dikit mo, isa pa rin yung idea ng kanta.
Ang comment ng judges sa amin, palitan lang po yung title. Wala naman po siyang binagong, wala naman pong lyrics na dapat baguhin, yung title lang po. Kaya sobrang pagpapasalamat ko po talaga sa Diyos ng marami.
If Jeffrey hurdles the monthly elimination round, he will have the chance to reach the ASAP Grand Finals this year.
Aking makamit sa paraisong langit sana ako'y makarating.
Leslie Longbowen, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
GSIS Thunder Furies is still in high spirits despite suffering defeat against leading PNP responders while Judiciary Magis climb up the score ladder along with the Ombudsman graft busters. Bernard Dadis explains why.
Off the board. Long go-ahead pass to the hands of Balogog.
Team PNP responders maintain lead in the ongoing UNTV Cup off-season executive face-off eliminations after strapping down GSIS Thunder Furies 98-50 on Sunday. Though GSIS claimed a 3-point lead in the first quarter, PNP retaliated with 26-0 run in the second quarter, paralyzing GSIS Cagers until the final buzzer sounded. But despite suffering loss, Thunder Furies remain in high spirits because the players showed great improvement than their debut game.
Talagang minotivate ko sila. Nung practice namin itong linggong to, talagang hinard ko sila. Tapos yung press break namin, yun na effective.
Don't treat this game lightly. Isipin natin, malakas yung GSIS, kaya tuloy-tuloy lang yung game.
Police Superintendent Anthony Padua and Police Superintendent Ereneo Dalugdog are the best players of the game after finishing combined 30 points.
The Patrick Lowry. Tough pass to field.
Meanwhile, Attorney Armando Sanchez Jr. and Director Nicky Laure led Ombudsman Grapbusters in clinching their second victory after narrowly clipping DOJ Justice Boosters in the second game, 69-61. Sanchez and Laure are the best players of the game after scoring 22 and 16 points respectively. Grapbusters attribute their win to its 11-man lineup, which is higher than their previous games.
Yung depensa namin. Saka yung addition ni Rafael, malaking bagay. Dahil lumuwag yung big man ko.
Pero kinapos lang kami siguro sa depensa kanina. Konti lang eh. Pero yung opensa naman namin medyo sumasabay naman.
Judiciary Magis meanwhile tallies a 3-1 win-loss record after blocking Malacanang PSC Camoo from snagging the elusive victory in the main game, 81-41. Joey Yabut and Judge Toma Cruz are the best players of the game, bucketing respective 19 and 14 points.
Yung pagkatalo namin sa PNP, medyo nagising yung team. Yung muling ensayo namin panay hard practice. More on defense.
Malacanang PSC Camoo and GSIS Thunder Furies both face elimination risk if they continue to remain at the bottom of the standings. Bernard Dadis, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Up next on Y News. Several people were killed and hundreds were injured after Guatemala's Fuego volcano erupts. Time magazine creates its June cover with drones. And Stephen Curry sets finals three-pointer mark as Golden State Warriors rout Cleveland Cavaliers. Stay tuned for William Thio. I'm Angelo Castro III. Good evening.
Good evening. Here are the top stories on Y News tonight. More than 27 million students from kinder to grade 12 return to schools as classes for the school year 2018 to 2019 open today. But the same old problems greet them, like lack of chairs and other sanitation facilities, such as in the 38 schools in Cebu region. Some students in Davao City National High School meanwhile endure congestion due to classroom shortages, while classes for grades 1 to 3 in Baguio Central School were postponed over incomplete classroom repairs. Despite these problems, however, the Department of Education considers the opening of classes today as orderly and peaceful. Education Secretary Leonor Briones says they only receive few reports as they have already addressed some problems. DepEd also assures students will no longer take classes under the trees this school year, though they are yet to complete the construction of classrooms in other schools.
We are estimating about 85,000 classroom in addition to the existing ones. And most of these are here in Metro Manila.
Meanwhile, former government officials maintain no wrongdoings in relation to the Dengvaxia anomaly. In today's preliminary investigation of the Department of Justice, former President Benigno Aquino III stresses there are no categorical findings directly linking Dengvaxia as the cause of death of some vaccinees. Aquino, along with former Health Secretary Janet Garin and former Budget Secretary Florencio Butch Abad, are facing complaints on the procurement of the anti-dengue vaccine, which allegedly coincided with the election ban in 2016.
Pag dumating yung election campaign, election ban, no, which was March 26 to May 9. Yung pinaka-last na action na siguro masabi natin kaugnay ng disbursement, yung pag-execute ng purchase order which happened on March 9. So March 9 and March 26, medyo magkalayo.
Garin, meanwhile, emphasizes that the confirmation of the deaths of children who had undergone autopsy failed to follow the World Health Organization's guidelines, a matter which was slammed by the Public Attorney's Office that held the autopsies. The next hearing will be on June 22nd, when complainants are expected to submit their comments on the counter affidavit subscribed upon by the respondents. In other news, the public soon will have hassle-free business transactions with the government once the ease of doing business law is fully implemented. The law mandates that simple government transactions must only take 3 days, complex ones will take 7 days, and technical transactions should only take 20 days. These transactions include business permits, passports, NBI, and other clearance permits, among others. First-time law violators will face 6-month suspension, while second-time offenders will face imprisonment of up to 6 years. The implementing rules and regulations of the said law is still being crafted, but anyone who has complaints about slow document processing may report it to the DTI Competitiveness Bureau.
Dapat mabilis, hindi natin pinatatagal, hindi natin pinapahirapan, hindi tayo nang hihingi ng mga requirements na hindi naman talaga kailangan.
The Bicameral Conference Committee vows to thoroughly scrutinize the proposed Bangsamoro Basic Law to reconcile disagreeing provisions. These include the territories that would be placed under the Bangsamoro region, power sharing, and taxation. The committee will also deliberate whether to include political dynasty ban in the BBL during its meeting from July 9 to 13. The lawmakers eye to ratify the bill on the resumption of session on the 23rd of July or the day of the State of the Nation address of President Rodrigo Duterte.
All the important concepts are there. May block grant, may special development fund, mayroong taxing power, yung hatian, andyan yung parliamentary structure of government.
Meanwhile, President Rodrigo Duterte plans to procure new helicopters from South Korea following the failed aircraft acquisition from Canada this year. During his speech before the Filipino community in Seoul, the president explains he ordered the cancellation of the chopper deal in February after the Canadian government said the choppers can only be used for humanitarian missions and not for combat operations. However, the president argued he needed air defense to protect the Filipino citizens against the enemies of the state, such as the New People's Army and foreign terrorists. In other news, the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, warns Filipinos of possible contamination in luncheon meat products amid reports of orally injured American consumers due to metal pieces in Spam products. This is following the recall order of Hormel Foods Corporation in the United States for more than 228,000 pounds of Spam and other products due to reports of metal shards found inside containers. The FDA says affected batches of Spam bear these product codes on your screens, all of which have best buy date of February 2021. If the products are found to be contaminated, consumers should immediately destroy or return it to the establishment where they purchased it and report it to the FDA. France and Britain moved to challenge what they see as China's increasing militarization in the South China Sea. Over the weekend during the Shangri-La dialogue in Singapore, The European countries announced their warships will sail in the contested waterway. France's armed forces urged countries to abide by international law, expressing support for a legally binding, comprehensive, and effective code of conduct in the South China Sea, while Britain noted that some ignoring the rules-based approach into the issue and that it undermines peace and prosperity of all nations. France said at least 5 French ships sailed through the South China Sea last year, while British helicopters and ships also joined the France task force that sailed in the disputed waterways. The commitment of the 2 European countries is in support of the plan of the United States to intensify freedom and navigation operations in the contested region. Meanwhile, the United States vows to continue imposing economic sanctions on North Korea ahead of the summit between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and President Donald Trump. Kath Carriedo tells us why.
The upcoming meeting between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump was high on the agenda of defense ministers during the Shangri-La Security Summit held over the weekend in Singapore. During the sidelines of the event, U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis announced that Washington will continue imposing economic sanctions on Pyongyang ahead of the Trump-Kim meeting on June 12.
The strong enforcement of North Korea-related United Nations Security Council resolutions will continue. Our objective remains, as stated by Minister Onodura, the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization and removal of all WMD on the Korean Peninsula.
The Trump administration wants the North to denuclearize, meaning to get rid of its nuclear arsenal, in return for relief from economic sanctions. But North Korea's leadership is believed to regard nuclear weapons as crucial to its survival and has rejected unilaterally disarming. Also during the sidelines, Japan, Korea, and U.S. also agreed that pressure is needed to be applied on North Korea ahead of the U.S.-North Korea summit. Japanese Defense Minister Tsunori Onodera said the solution to the North Korean problems should be diplomatic, but the efforts must be backed by the defense forces of the 3 countries.
We look forward to continue closely working with you in order to realize the complete, verifiable, and irreversible dismantlement of all of North Korea's weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missiles.
Meanwhile, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad reportedly plans to visit North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, potentially the first meeting between Kim and another head of state in Pyongyang. North Korean state news agencies said Assad made the remarks as he received the credentials of North Korean Ambassador Moon Jong-nam. There was no immediate comment from the Syrian president's office. Kath Carriedo, UNTV News and Rescue, USA.
Those are the reasons behind the news. June 4, 2018, I am William Thio, and because we need to know, we will always ask why. Thank you for watching Y News.